I'm the result of an accumulation of everything. Everything has sort of come together. There's sculpture, there's art, there's architecture, there's engineering, and it goes into nature. And it gets into mathematics, and mathematics is in nature, the same mathematics we use or I use in architecture. So basically, I've covered everything, and everything comes together. The artist's name, Didymus Bernadotte. My mother was a born-again Christian, so she called me a doubting Thomas. Thomas became my biblical hero. When I retired, I started to paint and sculpt seriously. Now I'm competing with such names like Corbusier, Mies van der Rohe, Frank Lloyd Wright, Buckminster Fuller, and when you come up with Glenn Carlson, it didn't just work. Thomas, his surname was Didymus. My grandfather claimed the family had royalty right back to Bernadotte, which is the royal family of Sweden. So Didymus Bernadotte became my nom de plume for my paintings and my artwork. I've always been drawing and building things. When I finished high school, I wanted to become an artist, but I couldn't find an art school. So the next best thing was engineering, which I understood. So I enrolled in a school of engineering. I got to the university, and I happened to wander through the School of Architecture. That is what I want. So I switched. Now, architecture made me 3 or 4 bits of education. There was artwork, drafting, painting, sculpture. There was history. I had 4 years of art history. There was architecture itself and engineering. I unfortunately had an automobile accident which forced me to retire early from architecture. I couldn't stand a 9 to 5. I still had the creative urge, so having the spare time, I started painting and sculpting, and this is what it grew up into. There was a lack of discipline, a lack of philosophy in modern architecture that the ancients had. The Greeks did fantastic work, and they used the golden mean. The Egyptians did fantastic architectural work, and they used the golden mean. The Renaissance used sacred geometry, and I got interested in that. There's nothing sacred about geometry. It's when you work it with a church, it's sacred geometry. You put the same geometry in another building, it is not. A lot of people get very carried away with the idea of sacredness, and there's nothing sacred to it, it's just straight geometry. Since the Renaissance rebelled against what was happening in the Gothic church and architecture, they went back to the Greek philosophy. The Industrial Revolution was taking place. We had railroads, factories, and banks and whatnot were coming, which would never happen before. So architecturally, they didn't know what to do. So they copied the Greek. Banks became Greek temples. The railway stations were Roman baths. And it was phony. And this is what I entered into when I studied architecture. When I retired, I was still interested in architecture, and I wanted the truth. I wanted a philosophy that worked. So I thought back, well, what has influenced me? There was one mention of the golden mean in all the 4 or 5 years of art history that I had at university. So I went to the library and looked it up. And there it was, 0.618. One magical, mythical number. And this is everything I've done since then. It's basically 0.618 in proportion. The plants do it. Our whole body is based on that proportion. It's universal. This painting is painted in a golden rectangle. Now, a golden rectangle is a square plus another golden rectangle. Now, if that is a golden rectangle, that is a square plus a golden rectangle. So you break it down and break it down, and it's simple as that. And all my paintings are basically done that way. The golden rectangle is a square plus a golden rectangle, which is a square plus a golden rectangle. I do everything freehand. I sketch up an idea, and that idea I develop on a grid. And this grid is broken up into the golden mean. This dictates where lines go, where proportions go, and I keep on sketching, changing, sketching, changing, sketching, improving, and eliminating until finally it locks in. Now this is a sketch that's been developed to the point where I was ready to do a painting of it. It's done on tracing paper and it's done over that grid. It's that simple. They're all freehand with brush. So that's how much hand control I do have. I don't use masking tape. I do draw on the canvas with drafting instruments. It's all drafted on perfectly. And then it's just a matter of painting the areas and filling in the little details of horsemen, trees, and people, and what have you. My colors are brown and blue, basically. Now, as an architect, I did the color schemes for practically all the buildings I worked on because nobody else wanted to do it. And I made some horrible mistakes. I put together some terrible colors. I got to the point where there was only one color scheme that I liked. That's blue and the brown, black and white and gray. I can't use green, no matter, I like green, but I can't use it in my paintings. And orange, no way. Yellow, That's all I've ever needed is just the brown and the blue and the white. I never needed any more colors. What I've been talking about is almost dull mathematics. You can put into the paintings stories, as like this painting here. That's all mathematical above that. But you put a human figure in, give it an attitude, you're creating a mood, and the mood you read with your emotion. A black sky, and you put a couple of birds in. You're creating volume. Without those birds, it's just a flat black surface. So there's little techniques like that I use to give the paintings more interest, to give them a feeling, give them personality. This is just a black panel and a white panel. I've got a group of men in here, but their eyesight is all on a horizon, so that creates space. The further the person is away, the higher the feet. The closer, the lower down. So you get depth, you get perspective. This is what we call a horseman. What I call a horseman. What it is just a circle and another circle horizontally, and it's reduced by 0.618. You go 90 degrees up, another circle, 0.618, another one, and another one. What happened was the spaces between were more interesting than the circles. And I painted the spaces between, and they looked somewhat like a horseman. And I lived on the prairies, which in the wintertime, it was just white horizon and a dark sky, and there were horses and cowboys. So that is a symbol I sort of use as a sort of a trademark, the horseman. Fun things to play with.
Mm-hmm.
Well, having looked up the golden mean and finding the proportion, and from history of art, I knew that it was used in the pyramids, the Great Pyramid, and the Greek temples. So I started playing with pyramids and creating my own. They're all based on the golden mean, but rather than just study what was done, I created my own. And then once I figured out that, the next step was getting it into architecture. And that time I was building my own home, all based on the golden mean. That house was built. I built it with my own hands. So I sort of proved by every joint in there is all worked to the golden mean. And it's so simple and so easy. You don't have to worry about anything. You just go ahead and build it. It's just bing, 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 bing. Why we don't use it? I'd say it would simplify things so much. These are monuments, monumental architecture. They can be functional, but I was fascinated by monuments and played around with the golden mean and created a number of them. And it's sort of the ultimate one is the one up in the far corner up in there. That is taking it to the, as far as, it's all the golden mean. And that on the table is taking the golden mean through architecture, through town planning, on into the future. Now, each of these designs are on the gold rectangle. They're beautiful, they're sculptural. And if you take it far enough, each one is a city itself. And these are groups of cities. Each city contains the people that work there. It contains the factories, it contains the offices, it contains the markets. And the transportation is underground, one for the other, but there's no need for transportation because the people live in the city which they work in, and they have the recreational on the ground above. The element in the middle is the waterworks. It supplies the water, and it's high to get pressure. There's streams bubbling over the edge into the pond. These other elements there are, they take moisture from the atmosphere and create ponds, and that creates the water. So ultimately you can take this past what we now call town planning into future planning. But this is, what else do you do? This was what I thought of proposing to put out in front of the municipal building, beside the aquarium, out on the water, so that you get the reflection of it off the water, and floating, it goes up and down with the tide. And it's just a monument for Euclid. I don't do it for other people. It's something that just happens within me, boils out. It's a continual thing. I can't stop it. It's something I felt was needed in architecture and in art. And I figured I found the answer, and I just devoted 25 years in showing it and hoping that somebody will come along and say, Eureka, you found it, or I found it, or I like it, or whatever. The interesting thing is children like it. They have no trouble with it whatsoever. Adults, they have their egos, and they have what they were taught to override and whatnot. They have a more difficult time. But I believe there's a universal mind. And I believe that is everywhere. And each one of us have a brain that tunes into it. And when you see the truth, your universal mind tells you that it is the truth. So there's something that I don't have to go around preaching. Something is all there that hits you. Your eyes see it, they are the antenna. That is the way I see it, how it happens, and why people look at it. My driving force throughout my entire life is to search for truth. And the result you can see here. Simplification. It's truth, goodness, and beauty simplified. And this is it. And it is everywhere. It is in the human body, the proportions thereof. The same proportions of our human body we use in architecture, or the ancients used very successfully. I just hope somewhere along the line, the architects who are looking for a philosophy can find my work and find it there. This is why I basically did a lot of my work. Just hoping someday it'll catch. It's so simple. Everything ties together, from exotic town planning to horsemen. Everything is related. Truth, goodness, and beauty. When you've got those three things, you've got it made.